Lovebirds of Reddit, how did you get over the one that got away? Did you ever see them again? Was tough. Took time. Eventually, I came to terms with the fact that the love you feel for each person is completely different. If you're thinking you'll never feel this way about a girl, you're right. You never ever will again. But the same goes for the next girl, and the one after that, as well. So it's okay to be sad, but don't worry. Love is a strange feeling and it really differs from person to person. Avoid them like the plague, was the advice I got for a speedy recovery. It's worked for me. And it depends on the person whether status quo can and should be maintained with an ex. I'm not really sure I ever did. She was a great girl, but I was an idiot. She never moved away, but got married and had 3 kids. I saw her constantly at the grocery store, restaurants. I even worked with her husband. She got a really aggressive form of cancer a few years back and passed away. She came back years later. I was so excited and hopeful. Alas, we had the same issues. Was never quite sure if she liked me as much as I liked her. Her interest seemed to waver. Didn't work out, unfortunately. We keep in touch occasionally, so I've been somewhat privy to her life direction. In 10+ year hindsight, I can say her would have either ruined or severely hindered both our lives, but I'm glad to see that she took a solid bounce off rock bottom and seems to be doing well for herself. Sometimes you just gotta let them be the one that got away. There's been a handful of ones that got away. It's just a part of life and you move on. Slimmed down, beefed up, went to therapy and got her back. She is truly the love of my life and I wasn't going to let my own faults get in the way of that. In all honesty, no. I still think about her every single day. Every time I see her name in an advertisement or on a coffee mug in some store, or hear a song with her name in it, I just wonder how she is, and how her life turned out, and how she's doing now. After we broke up, I never saw her again. I still miss what we had. I've reconnected with a few ones that got away, and in most cases they're different people now, just as I am. The funny thing is you still pine for the memory of the old them, because they're really a totem for the amazing daydream of youth and the infinite paths your life could have taken. The only reason your current spouse isn't the one that got away is because their probability curve has collapsed in tandem with yours. I still wonder about ones that got away, not because I have regrets, I certainly don't. I'm just infinitely curious what would have happened if I loaded a save point 20 years ago and did everything differently. It's a fascinating daydream to have. Over time, it turned into a different kind of love. She's my best friend now, and I was honored to give a toast at her wedding recently. Some soulmates aren't meant to be romantic. I thanked my lucky stars every day that we rekindled our romance 12 years post-breakup. He had a failed first marriage and I had a baby while we were apart, but here we are now, just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. We also had a kid together, so we are a family of 4. I love him and knew it was always him. I feel sad for people who want to be with somebody they are not with. Still not over it. I lost my lover, my best friend, my soulmate, my yin to my yang, my spirit dragon. Best 12 years of my life. She passed away. Not over it. Wasn't supposed to be like this. I love and miss her so much. I tried getting back out there, starting over. FKN sucks trying to date women, you don't know what to say to the date. I tried getting a hooker for friend purposes, FKD that up. Lamaui. I don't know what to do and it's fucking depressing and I hate waking up alone. I cry for 10-15 every morning when I wake up looking for my wife. Then reality sets in. I miss you babe. Feel like screaming at the top of my lungs every now and then when she pops into my brain. Sometimes I actually do. It's been 20 years, I've never seen her again. Probably the exception. I reached out to her 15 years later and in some ways it was like no time had passed. We had both done a ton of work in the meantime, so we were better people and could communicate. But whatever was between us was 100% still there, just as strong. In the interim we both tried to find other people, but no one quite was the same. We were happy enough, but we were always each other's one who got away until we weren't. And now I'm perpetually guilty, broken while she was sleeping. Put all her silverware in the toilet. Shaved her pets. You know, normal breakup shit. Sometimes special people come into our lives, stay for a bit and then they have to go, but the bit where they were here was happy, wasn't it? It's a newer quote, but quite truthful. No one gets away. You don't own anyone, but sometimes the path you are walking, that person can only travel so far with you before they have to go their own way. Then, someone new will join you later on your path, more meant to be the one to travel with who you are now. I've never gotten over the one person I found. He left because he was insecure about the relationship between me and my friend. Both are gone now. You don't just get over that shit. Personally, not healthily. Went through alcoholism, depression and isolation that happened to clash with the beginning and severe portions of the COVID lockdowns. Took me way longer than it should have to get back on my feet. I'm better now. Still think about her occasionally, but not in a longing-type manner. I don't have much of a desire to date these days. Still, I've learned that there is no one. There could be millions of people who you would grow to consider a soulmate. I haven't seen many of my exes since, but they all take up equal real estate in my heart. You never get over the one that got away. Your memory of them will always be there, in your head, like a stone in your shoe that you can't get out. Even if you are able to not consciously think of them, they'll show up in your dreams. Catching up with them later is just twisting the knife. Either because they are better off without you, or because they're no longer the person in your memory. I put the locks on the outside of the windows this time. I have two schools of thought on this. 1. The one that got away is most likely just fond memories. It didn't work for a reason, you just choose to remember the good times. I have exes that at a simple glance I remember fondly. Then when I dig in deeper I remember the loud screaming, throwing shit, using me, talking shit about me to my friends, etc. Not always, but more often than not. 2. Most of them got away. At a certain point, you realize that you gave up. Whether that's because you didn't put in enough effort, or if any more effort would have approached stalking, or anywhere in between, you stopped trying, and decided to let them go. It's not a bad thing, it's the natural course these things take. Very few of us are lucky enough to experience a mutual break with only good memories. I found a better bird. I eventually learned to move on and love again, but I didn't get over it. They live rent-free in my brain. Just be happy for them. Be happy for their marriages and life. That's all. Didn't work out for a reason because there was someone better suited for them. Didn't get over it. Saw her in Target last month and I quite literally sprinted out the store. Not over her, but I know to avoid danger when I see it. It's hard at the beginning. That's why I always find people that live further away so you can't see each other anymore. I don't think you ever get over them, but realize there's other great loves out there that will be better suited for you. I'm over it now and I'm getting married to someone else this year. It hurt for a while though and it messed up my mental health. I have made a good life for myself since though and I'm happy now. It's not a one that got away as such, but I often wondered about a relationship with someone, and what it would have been like. I never 100% get over them. There's two that come to mind for me. We all grew up, got good lives and spouses. Now I run into these two women on a very regular basis and my wife even considers them friends. Literally decades later and I still have that kernel of feelings. You just accept and make do, as most things in life. We actually got back together and are married now. She was my first GF, we both gave each other our first orgasms. I broke it off with her cause I was young and dumb. We went our separate ways, eventually married other people and had kids. Fast forward 20 years, my wife passed, and her husband ended up being an abusive narcissist. He caused a lot of hurt to her, but the beautiful soul I knew and loved is still there. We stayed friends over the years via FB, and eventually got back together and are happily married now. She's my best friend and I get to spend the rest of my life by her side. Life really couldn't be much better at the moment. Realize that it wouldn't have worked out. I also was able to find the right one, so that helped a lot too. I didn't really get over her for a few months, then we met again by coincidence, and have now been married for nearly a year. I felt absolute grief when I got broken up with in 2018. It was an unusual feeling, especially since he and I were only together for a few months and I had been in a 3-year-long relationship before that. Didn't hurt even a little bit as much as this did. It was the type of hurt that made all the love songs make sense, and the cliche things like every little thing would remind me of him. Even when I thought I was over it, I'd have dreams about him which would throw off my whole next day. When I found out he got a new girlfriend a few months later, it was as if someone had kicked me in the stomach. I really thought I'd never recover. Interestingly, this past December I ran into him at an airport where we both had layovers. It was the first time I had seen him in 5+ years, and I remember at one point I had dreamed about everything I would say to him if I ever saw him again. We caught up for a bit and I realized while talking to him that I felt bored. I made up an excuse to get back to a phone call and we parted ways. It's true what they say that time heals all wounds. It just may take more time for others. Yeah, I see my mom every day. I didn't. There are people living rent-free in my mind for as long as I can remember, and I guess it's part of me. I take solace in the fact that the person I was then, and the person she was then no longer exist. And the person I've become now and the person she has become now would not exist if I hadn't been who I was then and she hadn't been who she was then. I'm happily married now, and she is too. She recently had a baby, and they seem happy. I probably wouldn't be married right now if she hadn't broke my heart. I was in a very bad place then, and she was the catalyst that sparked a decade of figuring out who I was, coming to terms with my own mental health, and learning how to be a person that is capable of loving and being loved in a healthy way. A tiny part of me will always look back fondly upon the time I spent with her, and a tiny part of me will always wonder, what if? But the reality is that I most likely would have thrown my life away and been a failure had she not broken my heart. I'm fairly certain she hates me, or at least hates the person I was 10 years ago. Or maybe I'm being egocentric and she doesn't even think of me. But either way, if by some 1,000,000 to 1 chance she happened to read this, thank you. You probably saved my life. I think people get too focused on there being one special person. This just isn't true at all and leads to some pretty miserable obsessive ideas. If you can open your heart to love, you'll find the world is full of people you can and will fall madly in love with. People change, and grow, and so will you. No one ever gets away. Love is always there for you. She was murdered for a petty reason, from a petty person. I did not see her again, and I definitely did not get over her. 15 years until he becomes eligible for parole. I'll be waiting. In high school, I was in love with this girl, but the anxiety of being rejected caused me to not say anything. She eventually started seeking out other relationships, and once she found one, it hurt so bad that I had to tell her. Of course, she had told me it was too late and that she had those same feelings for me but couldn't justify ending her relationship with the other dude. Absolutely would have changed my life had I actually not been a bitch. Nowadays I still have nightmares where the same girl tells me I lost her. It's the fucking worst. They all get away until they don't. Right person at wrong time. I don't think the one can ever get away. The one is the person who makes everything work and who you end up with eventually. Perhaps it simply takes some time to accept that you don't. But you can let that consume you, or you can move on, try to improve on yourself and leave yourself open to meeting somebody else when some time has passed. It does not get away. 9 years later and it remains. You might find someone else and love them. That's okay. But there will always be a small place in your heart reserved for that person. Probably for the rest of your life. For me, there are two that got away insofar as we were interested in one another, but nothing ever came of it because the timing was never right. I don't think that there's the one outside of who you choose to spend your life with, but that doesn't keep me from asking, what if, from time to time. When I find my brain going in the direction, I just remind myself that it's the unknown that I find exciting and not the person, because the person that I knew then is not necessarily who they are today. I also remind myself that there are things in my life that I'm very happy with that could not be if I had taken a different route. That's usually enough to keep me from continuing to think, what if? One of them I see annually because we still run in the same group of friends, but we're both happily married and have kids, so it's not weird. The other I've not seen in a very long time because we fell out of contact after I got into a relationship with my now wife. I don't think you can ever get over that one. It was rough for me since I may not ever see them again, but I will not forget the moments we shared. Right person, wrong time. Recently I just watched La La Land for the first time, and that movie is so real. I let time run its course. He pops up in dreams or the odd thought, but I'm in an 8-year relationship, so I found letting myself love someone again really helped. Sometimes we linger on the one who got away because it was the best we had been treated so far. Sometimes someone else comes along and makes you completely realize that the bar can go higher. Sometimes you grow and realize the bar was at the right height, but this just isn't the bar for you. Sometimes you take another crack at the bar and finally have the strength to pull yourself to its level. Was upsetting, as I was going to ask her if she wanted to be in a relationship, but she ended up in one before I could ask her. I didn't want to feel hurt about missing my opportunity to ask, so I pushed her away. We stopped talking for a few years. We started talking again a little over a year and a half ago, and the feelings all came back. I told one of my friends about it and was told I should just tell her why we stopped talking all those years ago. I told her. She told me if I would have said something all those years ago, she would have left him and been with me because she had feelings for me at the time as well. We started dating a few months after. Been together for a year and a half so far. Best relationship I've ever been in. She's amazing. It just becomes part of your story. Every good story has ups and downs. The more time that goes by, your story lengthens, your perspective broadens, and more context is given to that particular part of your life. Took me way too long. Broke up almost 10 years ago and I finally got over her a couple months ago, even though I've been in the best relationship I've had for the past 4 years. I remembered something we had to chat about, not related to our relationship, and I went to find the chat in Messenger randomly. When I went off the chat, I realized how manipulative and controlling she actually was. Made me instantly switch from, what could I have done to keep her 10 years ago, to, I was so stupid. In about 2 seconds. I'm glad I got it out the way though, as I realized my current 4 years and running relationship is what I thought my relationship to the one that got away was. I saw him years later and realized he was just some guy. Yeah, he was one of the first people in my life to be kind to me, but when I wasn't 18 anymore and had some, let's say, worldly experience, I realized that he wasn't that extraordinary. They never get away, because the idealized version of them never left. The real one did. I met someone 17 years ago in college. She completely changed how I thought a relationship was supposed to be. When we kissed, to say there was a spark is an understatement. It was like electricity. We went on a few dates and I ended up coming off way too strong. I was looking for something serious too soon and it put her off. She has since had 2 kids and is now divorced. Meanwhile, I'm happily married to my wife with a young son. I found her on Facebook recently and she accepted my request. I want to let her know that I never forgot about her, and that I wish I had been more mature back then. I haven't reached out yet. I love my wife and son and I'm not sure to what end telling this other woman what I think of her would accomplish. They all disappear and I keep getting older by myself. Realize they weren't actually the1, but rather someone She got away and then came back to me with the realization I was becoming the one that got away for her. We're happily together now. Never. 14 years after the fact and I still miss them. I've moved on, met someone else, had a child even. Everything is good on that front, but you don't forget and there is always the tiny flicker that won't go out. It stays forever but you learn to not focus on it, lest it consume you. Almost got away. She's in my freezer. I didn't. I messaged him last night cause I miss him and I was thinking about him and directly told him that. You learn that while they were perfect in many ways, there's a reason they got away. Sometimes it's time, sometimes it's space. The perfect person will meet you in the perfect setting. I'm married, have a 3-year-old daughter, and another coming in 3 months. I'm still not over the one that got away, no matter how much I try. They still show up in my dreams 15 years later and I wake up feeling this awful hole in the heart. That's me, though. You might be different. I have had a handful of deep loves in my life. I try to move on, stumble upon some duds, and then find another true love. Rinse, repeat. Only the first really messed with me. Didn't date for a year afterwards, which didn't help. I ran into her several times in that year. She wouldn't talk or even make eye contact. Confused face. I guess just took time. The breakup kinda whacked me out for a bit. What over it counts as, but I'm over it because I'm not thinking about her hardly ever. But then again I haven't really dated at all in the 5 years since, so maybe part of me isn't. Yes. I realized I was in love with the idea of them instead of the actual person. I went out for a bunch of dates with one who I hadn't seen in decades. Eventually, I asked, "Do you think your personality has changed much over the years?" And she really thought about it and said, "I don't hide who I am anymore." That was exactly it. I realized that the one who got away could actually be the one who realized you completely believed them. They could not be with me because I was actually in love with their act. They didn't get away. They were just a learning experience. Found someone better suited for me and married him. I still think about him from time to time and hope he is well. Last I heard he is married now too. I did see her again and it brought back all the regret of not saying that I loved her. It was amazing while it lasted and we were stupid enough to never admit that we were in love. Then she left for overseas and that was the end of it. I miss her, and I miss what we had. It taught me to never keep something like that inside, but I haven't found someone to say it to ever since. Still getting over it. It took years for me to go just a day without thinking of him. I didn't think I'd ever get over him, despite having multiple relationships post-breakup. 5 years later, I had finally moved on, and we ended up matching on Tinder. We rekindled things for a few months, but it just didn't feel the same. I realized I had romanticized the relationship post-breakup. I don't love him anymore, but I'm afraid I'll never love someone as much and as strongly. We're close friends now and I prefer it that way. But strangely, I still hope we end up together. We proceeded to get back together and get married. We currently have a baby girl and life couldn't be better. I found the one that was meant for me, and never thought of the one that got away ever again.